Hello, Midnighters, and welcome to the 45th Toronto International Film Festival. I'm the lead programmer of the Midnight Madness section, and you have all just watched the white knuckle roller coaster thrill ride that is Roseanne Liang's Shadow in the Cloud. And with us is writer-director Roseanne Liang and Chloë Grace Moretz, Lieutenant Maude Garrett herself. Thank you both for coming. Congratulations on this movie.
Thank you, Peter.
We were talking briefly backstage virtually about whether or not, Chloë, you had a chance to see the film, because usually we would have all just watched the film together in Toronto, standing ovation, of course, and you'd be all on stage. But Chloë, what were your thoughts of the film? You just watched it, I heard.
I mean, firstly, I'll say I am so bummed that Toronto isn't happening in person this year, because Toronto, since I was 13 when I first came, is probably my favorite festival out there. It's so fun. It's so exciting. And it's really great to be surrounded by people who also love genre, I think, particularly in this Midnight Madness category. So for me to be able to do this right now is very exciting with a project that I love so much. When I first got the link to watch Shadow in the Cloud, now I think that must have been Roseanne? I think probably a month or two, at least 2 months ago.
Yeah. We only finished it recently. Yeah.
I sat down to watch it, and I luckily, who lives at my house is like my brother and my mother, and we basically had like a 3 different tiers of ages watching the movie, so it's kind of like the perfect test audience. So I got to sit there and watch it, and knowing this movie inside and out, shooting it every single day in this ball turret, day in, day out, pretty much just Roseanne and I doing this, I felt like I knew this project as well as I could know it. But I was still on the edge of my seat, and I was screaming at the TV, and I was like totally locked in on every beat that I was like, how do I feel like I not know what's happening? You know what I mean? And I ended up watching it actually 3 times after, because every single time I watched it, the movie grew in reasoning and in shape. And, at first it's this exciting, decadent, wild ride. And then the more you sit on it, the more you process it, I think it's a testament to how brilliant Roseanne is, that it really leaches into your brain in a way. And you start to process it in so many different ways that when you watch it the second, the third, the fourth time, you realize all these things that in the very beginning, tips the hat to what's going to happen, or, the little beats that are put in there. And I think, honestly, I've said it multiple times to my friends, but I think this is one of my favorite projects I've ever been a part of, probably my favorite project I've been a part of thus far, in my adult career especially. So I feel proud to be in it.
That's fantastic. Roseanne, I'm sure you'd love to hear that.
Oh my God. Chloë.
I have to agree. I have to agree with Chloë too. I have to agree with Chloë about how brilliant the film operates, not just as a great action movie, but I mean, as a critique of a toxic work environment. I mean, like, even that I feel is achingly relevant today. And I kind of wanted to know, were conversations about kind of even systemic barriers that inhibit new mothers in a work environment, that stuff that actually factors into the story. Were these discussions that both of you were having while you were rewriting and developing the screenplay?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we really wanted to be true to the language and what, like some of the stuff that people put up with on a daily basis, you wouldn't believe. Like, and in this world of, over information, when people show actual screenshots of the way that men talk to them, it's just insane. You'd write, as a writer, you'd write it and be like, nah, this is ridiculous. No one's going to believe this. But then, I talked to Chloë a lot about making sure that we were authentic to what this actually was. Chloë, what do you reckon?
No, big time. I mean, I think that it was really important, kind of coming in to also kind of glean that from, it was kind of obvious to me what Roseanne wanted coming to this project. She really wanted to have all those callbacks to what's happening right now in modern day life, and how, yes, this is a movie based in the World War II era, but not much has really changed, shockingly. And so much so that she actually had me go talk to a bunch of different women in a bunch of different situations And anywhere from, I was surrounded by a bunch of young mothers who were dealing with lactation problems to women that had been in abusive relationships. And I was able to kind of really glean a lot from those conversations that I had to be able to put a lot into the character of Maude, who is a multifaceted woman. And she's kind of been through a lot, and her decisions, I think, that she makes, aren't always the right decision, I think, but it's the decision that she knew she had to make in that point in time. And we both agreed from the beginning that we really wanted to make a female character that wasn't like, always making the right decision and it was always kind of like the perfect girl. We wanted a complicated, multifaceted female lead, because we have those for guys every day, especially in a World War II flick. But you never see a woman in a World War II flick as a lead, and you also don't see her as a complicated, kind of messed up character sometimes. But you really understand by the end of the movie why she's done what she's done, and what she's up against.
And by the end of the film too, there's this really great montage of documentary footage of women in World War II, which, you're right, we don't often see the roles of women apart from nurses in Pearl Harbor or something like that. It's usually we don't get this kind of action-driven character for women to play. And so I wanted to ask a bit of a question about the historical research that went into the film in terms of developing the world, the stories that you drew from, because it feels like Maude might be sort of a composite of many women that were in World War II.
I mean, that archival footage that you're saying was absolutely new to me. I didn't know this when this project first came across my desk. I didn't even know this was a thing. Chloe's right. We never see movies about female pilots in World War II because they weren't even called an Air Force back then. They were called, they were civilians. They were supposed to be civilians that were an auxiliary force. So what happened is that they were running out of men, essentially, to fly planes. So they needed to transport planes from A to B, and they got women to learn how to fly these planes, and the women were flying them alone. Normally you'd have a crew of 10, you'd have a crew of, 5 to 10 guys, working, manning things so that they could defend the plane. But these women were transporting them alone by themselves, and women went down. I even found that there were American Asian female pilots. You can go back into the history of this, who perished, who crashed, transporting planes. And it's like, God, this is. I hasten to add that this is a genre film. We wanted to make it about Maude and her story, and it's not necessarily a World War II movie celebrating the service of these women. I think that film should be made more historically. This is a genre film. This is a fun film, but it certainly was amazing to find out about these women and to honor them with a really fun film like this.
And may it send another filmmaker or writer or actress to pursue that project, because that's I hope that those stories do get told. Let's talk about the plane itself. Where did you shoot this film? What was the set like for the Fool's Errand, the B-17 bomber? Like, where did you film it? Was it a set?
I'll take. Should I take this one, Chloe?
Yeah, whichever. I can take it if you don't. I don't mind.
Yeah, you go.
Okay,
you go.
I was honestly asked. That was like one of the first questions I asked Roseanne when I signed on to the project. I was like, how are we gonna do this? Is this gonna be like, are we gonna be in the air? Like, how practical are we getting here? And what I knew off the bat is we were going to New Zealand, which was really exciting because there's so many incredible artists in New Zealand, especially in filmmaking. And Roseanne really she really captained the ship or the plane by putting together an amazing crew to make this possible. And on a really tight budget, doing a project of this kind of scope, is always kind of, you're always wondering, is it going to really be able to be pulled off? And when I got into town, they were still finishing construction on the turret. The turret was probably 95% done, but then they were still figuring out a few different things and a lot of lighting tricks. But ultimately the ball turret was a standalone ball that was on like a gyroscopic rig that was hydraulically moved. So it rattled, it went left and right. When I moved the joysticks, I could literally move myself around. We were shooting it. Yeah, it was pretty wild. I didn't realize that we were going to have that amount of reality. And when I tilted up and down, the axis, it was actually a tilting like axis. So I was able to be in this more backwards position and the more forwards position, literally almost standing up. So there wasn't much that I had to fake in that sense. All the turbulence was created by people rattling it or by the hydraulics rattling it, depending on sound. So it was really just feeling the element that I was placed within. And, you know, I watched the movie, I always laugh because all the dials and stuff that I was fudging with inside there were total BS. Like I wasn't doing anything. So I kept having to because I looked at Roseanne and we were talking and I was like, I gotta have business during this. I was like, there's so much dialogue that we're gonna have nothing to look at except for me just staring off into the distance talking. Mm-hmm. So I had to make up all these total BS things of switching knobs and pulling things around. And it was just, honestly, it was so on the fly. But watching the movie, I was like, oh, it worked. It totally worked. There's that
one moment that there's that great moment when you cock the gun. So the art of that was something that the art department went deep on.
That was so cool.
Actually, that was a real thing where you actually there's no room. Obviously, you can't do this in the turret, so you actually have to give the cock. You have to do that.
It was so badass. It looked
one of my favorite moments.
I agreed. I agree. And then just to jump forward, the plane was almost a full size B-17 that they built completely out of wood and metal, and it was one of the coolest things to walk into because the artist was put in on that was otherworldly. I mean, it felt like a real plane. It moved. It shifted when we banked. The plane banked. So there was some really, really cool stuff on here that I give up to the art department and everyone involved in creating that. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I was so impressed by the tactile nature of the plane. It never really felt like a floaty CGI object. It really felt like a palpable space. I want to switch quickly to sound, though, because, and this kind of affects both of you, because you perform against voices for the whole movie, Chloe. And so what was that like on set, and what was the process in post in getting the rhythm of those performances? Because I frankly think you guys did a great job. The rat-tat-tat of dialogue reminds me of the Star Wars trench run. It's perfect totally. in how it's calibrated. But please speak to that if you could.
I mean, for me, acting opposite, that was also one of the big questions. I was like, so how will this work? Will I just be rattling off lines, or will you be saying the boys' dialogue? And she actually, it was all her decision really to make sure that we did have guys on set saying the lines, and that it was predominantly almost everyone I was speaking to on the day were the actors, except give or take a few. Nick Robinson wasn't on set for those moments. Taylor John Smith also wasn't on set, but I had all the other boys, all I think New Zealand based, right?
Yeah, we Beulah, Koale, and Callan were there. So yeah, the guys that lived overseas weren't able to make it for that part, but they joined us for when we did their on-screen parts.
Yes.
But yeah, so what it was is that Chloe was sitting in the ball on set with us, and then outside in a container that had been turned into a room.
A space container.
There were seven guys with partitions and mics being mean to her. And I wanted to create this sense of, as you say, a toxic workplace, Peter, which is the perfect word to describe it. In that these seven guys, we got them to really create this impregnable kind of camaraderie amongst themselves, so that Maude was really on the out. She was on the outside of that and had to deal with that from where she was in this little cage. So I never asked you, Chloe, did that feel isolating or
yeah. I felt crazy. I felt totally crazy. I was talking to, voices in my head the whole time. And the way we shot it, it was such a short film. I always had this little mini script with me, and it was the full size script, but in the tiny little version. And between every take, I was pretty much learning the next week's dialogue in advance. So I was learning a week in advance because we would shoot these segments running along 9-10 minutes at sometimes. So they were just full spans of emotion, and it wasn't really able for us to like really pop in for certain moments. We had to just do it as one long stream. So it was kind of difficult to really do it. And I felt a little crazy, but I think it really aided the situation that she was in, because, you know, a belly turret, you know, gunner is completely alone. And I think I wouldn't have been able to really put myself in that position even as much as if I had, you know, had the boys in front of me off camera speaking. You know, I think the fact that they were literally in those headphones and it was the on-camera headphones that I was hearing them come through, it was a game changer. They, you know, there was no real break between what she would actually be hearing in that moment. So when I took the headphones off, their voices left. It wasn't, you know, the voice of God in the studio. So it was isolating, but I think it had to be isolating.
We're running out of time, so I have two more questions, and I feel like we have been remiss not to discuss the gremlin in the plane, which is the gremlin itself. Roseanne, what went into the design of the gremlin? Like, because when people think of gremlin, thanks to Joe Dante, everyone has a very specific idea in mind of what a gremlin looks like, and you've gone in a new, much more frightening and meaner direction. So could you describe sort of the biology and anatomy of this gremlin?
We went deep, like, so we're the digital with the amazing New Zealand outfit that made this thing happen. I went deep with Unter was the name of the guy who was our VFX soup, and we went deep. We looked into hagfish. Have you heard of hagfish?
Yeah.
They've got these tongues which are toothed, and the way that they sort of splurge out of their mouths is really fascinating. And we looked at bats, obviously. We looked at primates. We looked at, you know, we looked at lots of animals to try and come up with this gremlin. We also went deep into the research. Like, this is a thing, you know, from World War II, gremlins were a thing that people actually believe in them, like people believe in aliens.
And that animation at the start of the film, was that a tribute to the never produced Disney project? Disney was going to make a movie about gremlins during World War II, and I think they
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was written by Roald Dahl, or it had been started by Roald Dahl.
Yeah, Roald Dahl had started it, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we went deep into the historical origins of the gremlins, and then looked at the animals that they might be like. And I guess thematically, it's kind of obvious that the gremlin is another form of adversity, whether it's, you know, sexual masculine adversity, or whether or not it's just a thing that wants to screw with her, just basically make life hell for her. Whatever you want the gremlins to be, that's it. So we needed it to be a monster that was like other monsters that we'd seen before, but yeah.
I mean, you do provide an incredibly cathartic beatdown of that monster at the end of the film. Chloe, did you ever get to see the monster at all? Because it was a wetted digital effect. So I imagine you were engaging with a physical man in a gray suit or woman. I don't know who was.
Oh yeah, no, we had our amazing stunt coordinator who had these styrofoam claw fingers, and he would be like, and like doing all these crazy things to me, and be like licking his tongue around like the front of the turret, and I had to be all scared and stuff. And I was like, and we would cut, and I'd be like, Roseanne, what the hell is happening? Like, what are we doing here? But it, you know, exactly, what is this? So it was one of those things that, like, I was so lucky to be able to work opposite someone who was game to throw himself into it, and he went full throttle into it. I mean, he gave me everything I ever could have wished for. So I had so much to act opposite. And in those big fight sequences, it really helped because he was also the stunt coordinator. So I was fighting against someone, but then we would also do a couple takes where I was fighting against nothing. So with the gremlin, we would get a few takes with him, a few takes without him. And so it always helps kind of to have him first, and then try it without him. But like the big sequence when I pulled out of the back of the turret and he gets my chest, I mean, it was terrifying. I mean, he was at the end of the day, still a grown guy in a gray suit, like on top of me. So I was still freaked out for sure, but it was because I went from this film straight to do Tom and Jerry, where I was again talking to nothing and acting opposite nothing. So I was just like, by the end of the year, I was like, what did I do to myself?
Can I just say, like, kudos to Chloe, because that was our winter. She was in the freezing cold water on the beach wearing, you know, like one layer, one gun out, you know, looking like a boss, and in the freezing cold, and she was doing it. And I don't know, Chloe, like, because you've been doing this since you were a kid, Chloe's technical prowess, she learns beats like a pro, like you are a pro, obviously. She's the most experienced person in the room, but the speed with which she learns action beats and performs them with a person then without a person is just incredible to watch. I bow down.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I Chloe, I call you the greatest generation's Ellen Ripley. So.
Oh, I'm so down with that.
Congratulations to you both. That's probably all the time we have. I honestly could keep going. I really do love this film, and I can't wait for the audience at TIFF to watch this at a drive-in as well, which I think will be really, really special.
So cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations. And may we see more action films, preferably action, creature feature, war, hybrid movies from the both of you soon.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And just a reminder to those watching at home, please vote for the film. It is eligible for the Audience People's Choice Award, tiff.net/vote. Thank you very much, and good night.